The airplane that morning didn't feel like the kind of place where history would breathe again. It was one of those flights packed with ordinary lives, teachers going home, Marines heading back to base, a grandmother whispering prayers over a rosary, kids swapping headphones so neither felt alone in the sky. The aisle smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air. The captain had promised a smooth ride. People trusted him. People always trusted the sky until it reminded them what power feels like. Seat 14A didn't look like a seat that belonged to anyone special. The woman sitting there made sure of that. Gray hoodie, simple jeans, hair tied back with no effort to impress anyone. A paperback book lay half open on her tray table, not because she was reading, but because she wanted the world to think nothing about her required attention. She didn't laugh. She didn't talk. She didn't even tap her foot to music. She simply existed with a stillness that didn't belong on a plane full of nerves and chatter. Yet anyone who truly looked, really looked, would notice that her eyes never stopped scanning. She watched exits without appearing to, counted window rows without moving her lips, studied behavior the way others studied magazines. Calm but never careless, quiet but never unaware. Her name was Iron Fist to these people. Here she was nobody. 30 minutes into the flight, the first unsettling thing happened, not something dramatic, only a subtle change. The plane shifted altitude abruptly. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Coffee trembled inside paper cups. The captain's calm voice returned, lighter than it should have been. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to make a minor course adjustment due to traffic in higher airspace. Nothing to worry about. We appreciate your cooperation. Nobody worried, or at least they pretended not to. But the woman in 14A slowly lifted her eyes to the window. Clouds began stacking like walls instead of floating like pillows. The sky had grown tense. That wasn't normal. Then something streaked past the wing so fast the air itself shuddered. A blur, metal, speed, authority, the kind of presence that carried weapons. Several passengers gasped. That wasn't turbulence. That was a fighter jet. A little boy pressed his forehead to the glass, eyes glowing with wonder. A businessman cursed under his breath. A woman clutched her husband's hand, whispering questions he didn't have answers to. Then another one appeared. This one didn't pass. It positioned. Close. Guardian or hunter. The seatbelt signs chimed on. The cabin crew exchanged glances that said more than any safety briefing ever could. The lead attendant's hand trembled slightly as she picked up the intercom phone, and then paused when the cockpit called instead. A short, sharp conversation followed. Too fast, too urgent, too quiet. When she hung up, her smile was an armor plate desperately trying not to crack. "Everything is okay, folks," she said, but her eyes betrayed her. They didn't look okay at all. The quiet woman lowered her book completely now. She didn't breathe faster. She didn't panic. She simply listened. And then it happened, the moment the sky forgot how to be peaceful. A burst of radio communication bled through the cockpit channel, loud enough to echo faintly through the cabin speakers. It wasn't supposed to be heard by passengers, but fate didn't always ask for permission. Through the static came the clearest, sharpest military tone. "Flight Control, this is Falcon Lead. Do you have response confirmation from the civilian aircraft? We need immediate verification. Priority Alpha. Authorization protocol engaged. Identify passenger. Call sign Iron Fist." The world inside the airplane stopped. Nobody breathed. Nobody blinked. People looked at one another like the name might be printed on someone's forehead. A father slowly lowered his child's headphones so the boy wouldn't hear what adults weren't ready to explain. Conversations dissolved into whispers. Rumors sparked instantly. Who's Iron Fist? Is this a hijack thing? Is someone dangerous on board? Are we in trouble? Is the military about to? The woman in 14A didn't move. Her fingers curled slightly around her armrest, not out of fear, but decision. Old instincts woke up like bones, remembering how to fight. Iron Fist. A name she buried. A life she buried. A ghost that wasn't supposed to exist. She looked up slowly as the fighter jet outside matched their speed, so close now she could practically see the pilot's helmet. Not threatening, not friendly. Waiting. Hunting. Expecting. Far ahead the clouds thinned. The horizon sharpened like a blade. The air felt heavier, not from altitude, but from truth pressing toward her. Nearby, a teenage girl bit her nails bloody. A Marine in uniform clenched his jaw, pretending he wasn't scared. An older man prayed under his breath. The cabin wasn't breathing as one anymore. It was fragmenting into fear. The captain left the cockpit. That never meant anything good. He walked down the aisle, pale, sweating despite the freezing airflow, eyes scanning passengers the way someone scans photos trying to recognize a ghost. His gaze passed row after row, then stopped. On her. He didn't speak at first. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. He swallowed. "Ma'am," he whispered, both desperate and terrified, "they're calling for you." Her eyes met his, calm, steady, heavy with the weight of wars she never talked about. She didn't ask how they knew. She didn't ask why they called. She didn't ask what the government wanted. Because she already knew one terrifying fact. The only reason fighter jets would summon Iron Fist was because the world thought Iron Fist no longer existed. Dead. Lost. Erased from records. Buried under classified lies. Yet here she was. Alive. And the sky had just remembered. The attendant stared, realizing the quiet woman wasn't just quiet. She was dangerous. Powerful. Important. Passengers started filming, phones lifted, screens shook. Social media would see fear before the truth. The captain hesitated again, voice trembling as he leaned closer. "They're demanding contact. They think you're either a threat or the answer to one." The air hummed with dread. The woman closed her eyes for 3 seconds, not to think, but to accept. Then she reached down, slowly unzipping the backpack at her feet. No one else breathed. Her hand disappeared inside. The Marine shifted in his seat. A mother pulled her child closer. A businessman instinctively moved away. Even the captain took half a step back. Her fingers found metal. But not a weapon. A badge. A medal. A ghost's proof of existence. She pulled it out just enough for the captain to see the insignia reserved for warriors who were never photographed, never thanked, never acknowledged in parades. The kind issued only to those who fought behind curtains. His eyes widened. His mouth parted. He whispered one word, reverent and frightened all at once. "Ma'am." She didn't nod. Didn't smile. Didn't claim it. She simply let silence confirm everything. Outside, the fighter jet dipped its wing. Waiting. Inside, the plane wasn't simply filled with passengers anymore. It was filled with witnesses. Witnesses who didn't understand the story, but could feel that whatever was happening was bigger than turbulence, bigger than a diverted flight, bigger than fear. The sky wasn't escorting a threat. It was calling back a legend. And as every soul on that plane held their breath, hearts shivering between terror and awe, the woman known only by strangers as the quiet lady in a hoodie finally lifted her eyes to the cockpit door. Because whether she wanted it or not, Iron Fist was being summoned back into existence. And the sky wasn't going to accept silence as an answer. The hum of the engines felt different now, almost reverent, as if the plane itself understood the weight of the moment. Passengers whispered, craning their necks to catch any hint of what was unfolding. The woman in 14A remained still, but every muscle in her body was alert, tuned like a high-precision instrument. She didn't fidget, didn't twitch, didn't show fear, but she was ready. She always had been. That quiet calm was not innocence. It was control forged in fire. The lead flight attendant approached cautiously, clipboard clutched like a shield. Her hands trembled as she asked, barely above a whisper, "Ma'am, are you the iron fist they're talking about?" The woman looked at her, the first real interaction she had had with another human being in hours. No hesitation. No hesitation at all. Her voice was measured, calm, but carried an authority that made the room shiver. "Yes." A hush fell across the cabin. The words were simple, but they changed everything. The flight attendants froze mid-step. Passengers instinctively leaned back in their seats, as if distance could shield them from what they had just admitted. The pilots in the cockpit now demanded immediate verification, and outside, the fighter jets maintained their positions like hawks circling prey. The woman removed her headphones fully, resting them around her neck. Her dark hair fell slightly over her face, and she tucked it behind her ear with a flick that was practiced, precise. Her eyes scanned the passengers, nodding their fear, curiosity, awe. She wasn't here for attention, for recognition, or even for gratitude. She was here for duty. The captain stepped down from the cockpit, pale and uneasy. His voice shook as he spoke, though he tried to mask it with calm authority. "Ma'am, they're requesting authentication. They want confirmation that you're the real Iron Fist. They need a secure call. Now." Without hesitation, she stood. Not dramatically, not theatrically. She simply stood, fluid as water, every movement deliberate, calculated. Passengers instinctively recoiled a little. They were used to flight attendants and pilots moving with caution, not a ghost of a Navy SEAL who had survived situations no one was meant to survive. The lead attendant handed her the headset from the cockpit. She took it, looping it over her ears, and closed her eyes briefly. For a moment, the cabin seemed to hold its collective breath. Then her voice emerged, cool, controlled, commanding. "This is Iron Fist. Identify yourself." Static crackled back, then voices. Military tones, sharp, professional, tense. "We read you, Iron Fist. Confirm code phrase Alpha 39er. Validate your operational status. You are cleared for response only if confirmed." Her jaw tightened. This wasn't a game. This wasn't some training exercise. This was real. Lives were on the line, both in this plane and in the airspace beyond. And the last thing anyone wanted was a false move. She responded without hesitation, delivering the code phrase in a voice that resonated authority, history, and unshakable confidence. The static quieted. The fighters went silent. The response over the radio shifted tone, no longer questioning, no longer commanding. Respect replaced tension. Recognition replaced uncertainty. "Copy that, Iron Fist. We read you. Command still lists you as KIA." A murmur ran through the cabin. KIA, dead, never to return. To the world she had been erased. But here she was, alive, commanding the sky. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, not now, not ever. A young Marine seated nearby whispered to his neighbor, voice shaking, "Is she really her?" "Yes," the woman in 14A finally said aloud, calm, concise, almost clinical. She didn't smile. She didn't acknowledge their awe. She simply confirmed the truth that no one else dared speak. "I am." The captain and flight crew stepped back, their shock barely masked by professional composure. They had never seen anything like this. Passengers filmed, phones lifted, the faint glow of screens capturing history in motion. They had no idea what they were witnessing. Some would post it, some would show friends, but none would understand the magnitude of what Iron Fist meant outside their narrow world. A fighter pilot's voice cut through the radio again, more urgent now. "We require battlefield memory verification. Only the operative can provide it. If confirmed, further escort protocols will be enacted. State the last operation code, Iron Fist. Her eyes closed briefly. She inhaled slowly. Her mind flickered to a desert ruin, a mission that had gone sideways, a firefight under collapsing structures, the screams, the fire, the debris, her teammates lost, names she couldn't erase, names she had to carry forever. A battlefield memory so classified that no civilian had ever heard it. Yet she spoke it, word by word, perfectly precise, her tone betraying nothing but cold calculation. Static filled the radio for a tense moment, then silence. The pilots outside didn't respond immediately. They couldn't. What she had just recounted was a history only ghosts remembered. Recognition clicked in their voices after a long pause. Verified. Copy, Iron Fist. Mission authentication complete. Escort protocols active. The passengers remained oblivious to the technical verification, but they felt the tension drop slightly, like a tide withdrawing after a storm. The fighter jets adjusted formation, closer now, protective rather than interrogative. Their shadows cut across the cabin windows, and the light shifted, turning ordinary clouds into ominous steel-gray shapes. But the relief was temporary. Outside, airspace remained tense. Military command demanded a continued escort, signaling a nearby unknown threat, something approaching, something fast, something the pilots hadn't identified. The woman in 14A knew instinctively what it might be. Not a coincidence, not random traffic, familiar danger, and it was closing in on them. Passengers shifted uneasily. Oxygen masks weren't deployed, but the panic in the air was palpable. Children clung to parents. Businessmen muttered to themselves. Flight attendants struggled to maintain composure while trying to reassure terrified passengers. Iron Fist's voice cut through it all, calm, steady, unwavering. Remain seated. Seatbelts fastened. Follow instructions. We're stabilizing. Her words, ordinary yet commanding, grounded the cabin. She moved swiftly, efficiently, anchoring frightened travelers with her presence alone. A mother clutching her child found herself obeying, not out of fear but instinct. A panicked teen stopped screaming mid-sentence. Her presence exuded authority. It was an invisible force, stronger than any turbulence. Outside, fighter jets continued their vigil. Inside, Iron Fist began coordinating with the captain and crew. Every instruction was deliberate, every movement calculated. Passengers had no idea she was effectively running a military-grade emergency protocol inside a commercial aircraft at 30,000 feet. Then the plane shuddered violently. Not turbulence. Something struck the fuselage from behind. A warning light blinked in the cockpit. Sensor anomaly. Unknown object approaching. The pilots scrambled, communicating with the military jets. The cabin went silent. Phones were lowered. Eyes widened. Passengers could feel it now. This wasn't routine. This wasn't an escort. This was a threat. Iron Fist didn't hesitate. She moved to the front of the cabin, speaking into the intercom with authority, her voice slicing through panic like a blade. Everyone remain calm. Follow instructions precisely. You are safe if you remain seated and adhere to guidance. No one spoke. No one moved. Every soul on the plane waited, and every pair of eyes kept flicking to the quiet woman in 14A, the woman who had been dead on paper, erased in history, now alive, commanding respect, attention, and fear all at once. Outside, the unknown object closed in faster. The fighter pilots communicated rapidly over the radio. Commands, countermeasures, positioning. And inside, Iron Fist quietly reached for the secure headset once more. Her voice, calm and authoritative, cut into the static. They want to know who I am. They want to know why I am alive. And they want confirmation of the truth no one else dares to speak. Passengers leaned forward, sensing tension like electricity in the air. The plane was no longer a vessel for travel. It was a stage. The audience didn't yet understand the play, and the woman in 14A wasn't the character they expected. She was the protagonist. The legend. Iron Fist. And the sky wasn't done with her yet. The cabin was eerily quiet now, as if time itself had slowed. Every passenger could feel the shift, though none fully understood why. They had thought this flight was ordinary, that clouds and turbulence were the limits of danger. But now, with fighter jets hovering outside and a mysterious unidentified object closing in behind, reality had changed. Their quiet neighbor, the woman in 14A, was no ordinary passenger. She was a storm contained in human form, a legend that history had tried to erase. She adjusted the headset, her fingers brushing against the worn edges of the earpieces, and her eyes narrowed slightly behind the hoodie. Outside, the shadowing fighters hovered, watching, waiting, a living shield. Through the radio came the military's voice, clipped and sharp, urgent and demanding. Identify yourself, confirm operational status, provide last mission code, verification required, civilian aircraft escort compromised, respond immediately, Iron Fist. Her jaw tightened. She had anticipated this moment for years, the day she would be forced out of her quiet life into the unforgiving sky once more. She inhaled deeply, remembering missions long buried under layers of secrecy, missions that had cost lives, missions the public would never hear about. Her voice came steady, controlled, unwavering. This is Iron Fist, operational status active, last mission code Delta 967, verification to follow. She paused, letting the words hang in the cabin like a warning. Then she spoke again, softer but precise. Do you want proof of authenticity? I will provide it, but understand it will require full attention. Civilian witnesses may find it disturbing. The cockpit's radio was silent for a moment. Then one fighter pilot's voice, hoarse and incredulous, responded. Copy that, proceed. Provide memory verification. Only operative may respond. Failure to comply will escalate engagement. The quiet woman closed her eyes for a heartbeat. Then she began. She spoke of the last mission, the one that had officially killed her in the eyes of the government. It had been a desert operation, nightfall, ruins of a collapsed village. Her team was pinned by insurgents with advanced weaponry, trapped in a labyrinth of sand, debris, and fire. Helicopters overhead were delayed. Extraction was uncertain. The air was thick with smoke, heat, fear, and the screams of the injured. She recounted it in meticulous detail. Every angle of approach, every suppressing fire, every teammate's call sign, every fatal misstep that had claimed lives she would never forget. The static cleared. The fighter pilots were silent. Then slowly, one voice, almost trembling, responded. Copy Iron Fist. That account is accurate, confirmed, verification complete, you are cleared, escort resumes. Her eyes opened, calm, unshakable. She had passed the test no one else could pass, proven to the men who had once believed her dead that she was still alive, still capable, still lethal. Passengers were oblivious to the technicality of her proof. They saw a woman quietly speaking into a headset, speaking softly to an invisible presence outside. But the effect was undeniable. The tension in the cabin dropped just slightly, though everyone could feel the faint pulse of danger still lingering. But the calm was temporary. A new warning blinked on the cockpit console. A sensor anomaly, something fast, something unregistered. Unknown object approaching. Intercept not recommended, said one of the pilots over the secure frequency. Iron Fist's eyes narrowed. Recognition flickered. Not fear, but calculation. Years ago, she had faced similar threats, ghosts of operations gone wrong, rogue elements hunting her team, and she knew instinctively what this was. The unknown object wasn't random. It wasn't civilian. It wasn't a training exercise. It was deliberate, targeted. It had identified them and was moving fast. Passengers shifted in their seats, sensing the tension, though they could not see the full danger. A child whimpered. A mother clutched her son tightly. A man in the aisle pressed both palms to the seat in front of him. Flight attendants whispered reassurances they didn't believe. Iron Fist stood, slowly, purposefully. She walked down the aisle past wide-eyed passengers who instinctively gave her space, drawn by her authority, her presence. She did not speak to them, only observed. Who panicked, who was calm, who could follow instructions if needed. Every observation was stored, catalogued, evaluated. She returned to the cockpit. The captain looked at her with a mixture of awe and fear. "Ma'am, what is it?" he asked, voice tight. Her eyes steady met his. "It's someone we know, someone from the past, someone who thinks I don't exist anymore, but they were wrong." The pilots outside adjusted formation, blocking the flight path from potential threat angles, engines whining with energy. The unknown craft was closing rapidly, a sleek shadow against the morning sky. Inside, Iron Fist coordinated with the captain, translating her tactical knowledge into emergency maneuvers that kept the commercial plane stable. Passengers were shielded, largely unaware of the military ballet unfolding around them, though they could feel the subtle shifts, the lurch of the cabin, the unusual hum, the tense vibrations. "Brace for turbulence," shouted the captain, though his voice lacked conviction. He wasn't warning them of ordinary bumps. He was bracing for impact, for the unknown. Iron Fist moved to the rear of the plane, speaking into the intercom with authority, her voice a beacon. "Everyone remain calm, stay in your seats. Seatbelts fastened, follow all instructions. You will be safe if you remain seated." The passengers obeyed instinctively because her presence demanded it. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to threaten. Command radiated from her quietly, deeply, like a magnetic force. And then, without warning, the plane shuddered violently. Not turbulence, not mechanical failure, but a deliberate strike. A near miss from the unknown object behind them. Warning lights flashed in the cockpit. Oxygen masks did not deploy, but adrenaline surged through everyone in the cabin. The fighter jets outside responded immediately, weaving in formation to intercept. But Iron Fist didn't flinch. She had been in worse situations. She had stared down death countless times and come back to tell the story. Through the headset, her voice cut sharply. "Unknown object identified. High probability threat. All passengers remain seated. Emergency maneuvers in progress. Do not panic. Repeat, do not panic." Her calm voice anchored the crew and passengers alike. Fear was still there, thick and tangible, but it was tempered by the unshakable presence of someone who had lived through hell and come back. The unknown object closed faster. The fighters engaged, surrounding it, blocking its path. Iron Fist coordinated with the cockpit, translating military codes into actionable steps. Every command precise, every movement calculated. And then she realized something terrifying. This wasn't a random attack. This was personal. Someone from her past had found her. Someone who had thought that erasing her from existence would remove the threat she posed. A name flickered in her mind. A mission gone wrong, betrayal, lies, deaths that weren't accidental, and now all that history had caught up with her in the sky. She gritted her teeth. The unknown object was closing fast, fighter jets on all sides, every maneuver calculated, lives at risk. And in the middle of it, the woman who had been dead on paper remained calm, calculating, precise. Passengers whispered, phones lifted, screens trembled. Social media would see footage, but they wouldn't understand. They never could. Iron Fist took a deep breath. She had survived everything else. She would survive this, and she would make sure everyone else did too. Her voice came over the intercom once more, calm but commanding. "Trust the system, trust me, stay seated. We are not done yet, not by a long shot." The unknown object drew closer, shadows falling across the fuselage, the sky darkening as if the world itself had paused to witness the confrontation. And in that moment, every passenger understood something fundamental. The quiet woman in the gray hoodie wasn't quiet at all. She was the eye of the storm, the legend, the operative history had tried to erase. Iron Fist was awake, and the world would never forget her again. The plane shuddered again, violent enough that coffee cups toppled and passengers gripped armrests as if their lives depended on it. The unknown object had drawn impossibly close, moving with a precision that suggested intelligence, not randomness. Outside, the fighter jets flanked the plane like guardian angels, their sleek bodies slicing through clouds, engines screaming with controlled fury. Every second stretched, every heartbeat resonated with tension. Iron Fist stood in the aisle, headset firmly in place, scanning the cabin. She noted who could follow instructions, who panicked, who froze. Her eyes fell on the Marine nearest the exit row. He was young, tense, and tightly wound. She offered a barely perceptible nod. He straightened instantly, absorbing authority through presence alone. The captain leaned close, voice low but urgent. "Ma'am, the object, it's not just approaching. It's maneuvering, targeting us. I've never seen anything like it. What do we do?" She didn't answer immediately. Her mind raced through possibilities, scenarios she had run countless times before in virtual simulations and in the deserts of conflict zones. Every detail mattered: the object's speed, trajectory, the fighter jet positions, and the plane's fragile structure. Lives depended on precise calculation, not panic. Finally, she spoke. "Trust the pilots, trust me. We will stabilize, do not deviate from your seat. Follow instructions, no one panics." Her calm voice anchored the crew and passengers alike. Some wept silently. Others clutched phones, filming what might be the last moments of their lives. Every person on board understood instinctively that this was no ordinary flight and no ordinary passenger. The fighter pilots outside were now in full escort formation. Iron Fist's voice cut through the cockpit headset as she coordinated with them. "Falcon lead, mirror my maneuvers. Object is tracking altitude shifts. Adjust vector 5 degrees starboard. Prepare for intercept on my mark." Static crackled, tension rising in the voice from outside. "Copy, Iron Fist. Proceed. You are cleared for engagement. Civilian airspace protocol secondary." The unknown craft reacted immediately, shifting course, accelerating with uncanny precision. It wasn't just fast, it anticipated their maneuvers. Iron Fist recognized the pattern. Whoever or whatever was piloting it knew her methods, her tactics. A chill ran through her spine, but it was a familiar kind of fear. Controlled, focused, fuel for action. She returned to the cockpit. "Captain, I need full manual override. We'll need minor evasive maneuvers. Nothing extreme but precise. Passengers remain safe if you follow instructions." The captain nodded, white-knuckled but trusting her implicitly. She never gave orders she didn't mean to execute. Back in the cabin, she moved quickly yet deliberately, preparing for contingencies. The Marine at the rear assisted her in calming passengers, reinforcing the seating rows, and quietly preparing them to brace for unexpected turbulence. The object outside shifted again, shadowing the plane like a predator locking onto prey. Fighter jets adjusted formation, weapons systems ready. Iron Fist's voice cut sharply over the intercom. "Brace positions. Minor turbulence incoming. Remain calm, follow instructions. We are in control." The plane dipped slightly, then corrected. The object matched every adjustment, shadowing their movements with unnerving precision. The tension was unbearable. Every passenger felt the invisible predator approaching, even if they couldn't see it. Iron Fist closed her eyes for a moment, recalling her last encounter with betrayal. The face, the voice, the orders that had sent her team into a trap, the memory surged through her, and now she realized it was personal. The unknown craft was no coincidence. It was deliberate. Someone from her past had found her, someone who thought she was gone, someone who underestimated her. Her jaw tightened. There was no hesitation. The fighter pilots outside awaited guidance. The captain waited for maneuver instructions. The passengers awaited a calm voice amidst chaos, and she delivered. "Falcon lead," she said, voice steady, precise, commanding. "The object's pattern is predictive. Mirror our last 5 adjustments, then maintain altitude vector. We'll force a lateral shift and break their tracking lock. Engage defensive protocols if they close beyond 200 meters. Clear. Copy that, Iron Fist, the pilot responded. The unknown craft reacted immediately but not fast enough. Iron Fist's calculations were impeccable. The plane dipped, then rose, subtly shifting its trajectory. The object overcorrected, then had to adjust again. A faint tension vibrated through the fuselage, passengers gripping seats instinctively, unaware that every movement was deliberate, life-saving, and expertly calculated. Suddenly, one of the fighter jets radioed. Contact, object attempting aggressive maneuver, closing fast, ready for intercept. Iron Fist's eyes narrowed. Hold. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. I have visual confirmation. We'll force disengagement without escalation. Prepare to flank, maintain formation. Her voice, calm yet razor-sharp, guided the military pilots. Outside, the unknown craft made a sharp maneuver trying to match their evasive shifts. But Iron Fist anticipated, predicting every subtle movement, every course correction. And then, as planned, the plane executed a final lateral vector. The object overcompensated, jerking slightly, losing its precise alignment. The fighter jet seized the opportunity, accelerating in formation to flank the object. Engines screamed. Shadows danced across the clouds. The unknown craft blinked, adjusting, but its shadow now lagged, trapped by tactical precision it had not accounted for. In the cabin, passengers felt a subtle easing. The plane was steadier. Coffee cups wobbled but did not topple. Children's hands unclenched from armrests. The unknown predator was no longer a direct threat. Iron Fist exhaled, but only slightly. Her mind raced ahead. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. The craft had targeted her specifically. She knew the pilot or operator had history with her, and now the confrontation was inevitable. She returned to the intercom, voice calm, controlled, authoritative. Ladies and gentlemen, we've stabilized our flight. Minor turbulence continues, but you are safe. I need you to remain seated, seatbelts fastened, and follow all instructions. Thank you for your cooperation. Passengers murmured, tension easing just enough that some dared to whisper, though no one fully understood the magnitude of what had occurred. Outside, the fighters reported the object attempting disengagement, but Iron Fist's instincts told her it was tactical. It was not retreat. It was circling, calculating, observing. Her mind went back to her SEAL training, to the missions that had cost her teammates lives, to the betrayals that had marked her career. She realized this was not just a pursuit. It was a challenge, a test, a reckoning. The captain, visibly shaking but trusting her completely, asked quietly, "Ma'am, who is it?" Iron Fist's eyes hardened, staring at the clouds beyond the cockpit. "Someone I know, someone who thought I was dead, someone who underestimated what a ghost can do." She tightened her grip on the headset, calculating next moves, plotting the final steps that would protect the plane, passengers, and herself. And then the fighter jets reported over radio. Unknown craft initiating high-speed maneuver, targeting confirmed, likely hostile, stand by for engagement. A chill swept through the cabin, though passengers remained unaware of the specific danger. They only felt it, like static electricity building on the skin. Iron Fist leaned forward, her eyes cold, precise, deadly. "Falcon lead, weapons standby. I want it contained. I want no risk to the aircraft. I will handle the rest." The pilots outside understood instantly. They had seen her in action before, or at least heard of her. They trusted her judgment without question. Inside, passengers watched the quiet woman in the hoodie, unaware that they were witnessing history. A legend once declared dead was alive, commanding jets, intercepting unknown threats, orchestrating maneuvers that saved lives. Her voice, calm yet commanding, reached every corner of the cabin. Trust me, follow instructions, we are not done. Stay focused, we survive together. The unknown craft loomed ahead, circling, calculating, waiting. But for the first time, Iron Fist wasn't reacting. She was anticipating. Every movement, every calculation, every command was a step closer to turning the tables. And as the sun glinted off the fuselage, casting long shadows across the cabin in clouds, passengers felt a quiet, almost unexplainable awe. They did not know who she was. They did not know what she had done. But they understood this. The quiet woman in 14A was no ordinary passenger. She was a storm. She was a legend. She was Iron Fist. The plane continued its flight, but the calm was deceptive. The fighter jets maintained their protective formation, engines screaming with urgency, yet the unknown craft remained in pursuit, shadowing their every maneuver. It was faster, sharper, and eerily intelligent. Every twitch of the plane drew a calculated response from the craft behind them. Iron Fist, seated now in the cockpit alongside the captain, didn't flinch. Her eyes scanned every readout, every radar blip, every slight deviation in air currents. She had survived impossible situations before. She would survive this. The passengers, meanwhile, remained largely oblivious to the precise danger surrounding them. Some whispered nervously to one another. A child cried quietly in a mother's lap. A businessman clutched a briefcase like a talisman. They noticed the turbulence, the occasional shudder of the fuselage, and the occasional glance out the window at the jets flanking them. But none understood the full story, that their lives now hung in the hands of a woman erased from history, declared dead years ago, now orchestrating a ballet of survival at 30,000 feet. Iron Fist adjusted the headset. "Falcon lead, status report," she commanded. The voice crackled back. "Object remains on pursuit vector, engaging tracking patterns, estimated intercept in 2 minutes, weapons systems primed, standby." Her eyes narrowed. She recognized the trajectory. It was not random. It was deliberate, calculated. A hunter aiming for a prey it believed powerless, and she knew instantly who was behind it. Years ago, during a mission in the Middle East, she had uncovered an illicit network trafficking stolen military tech and classified intelligence. Her attempts to expose it had cost her everything. Her teammates had died. She had been erased, declared KIA. The organization she had fought against had assumed her disappearance meant the threat was neutralized. But now, they were proving her right all over again. They had found her, and they intended to finish what they thought they had started. "Captain," she said quietly, her voice taut with control, "we need to keep the plane stable but unpredictable. Every minor vector adjustment we make must seem natural. The goal is containment, not confrontation. Passengers must not sense any direct threat. Can you maintain that?" The captain swallowed hard. I think so, ma'am, but it's moving fast." Iron Fist's eyes flicked to the radar screen. "Fast is relative. Precision is everything. Trust me. We will survive this." She moved to the intercom, voice calm, commanding, yet soothing. "Ladies and gentlemen, minor turbulence expected. Seatbelts fastened. Remain calm. Follow instructions. Everything is under control." Passengers adjusted instinctively, unaware of the gravity of the words. A mother clutched her child tighter, whispering reassurances she didn't quite believe. A young man closed his eyes, pretending it was just another flight. Meanwhile, outside, the unknown craft closed rapidly. Iron Fist returned to the cockpit controls, working alongside the captain. Every maneuver was deliberate. She coordinated with the fighter pilots outside, giving precise instructions for flanking, containment, and interception. The unknown craft adjusted constantly, trying to predict their moves, but she had anticipated this. Every course, every angle, every response had been calculated. Suddenly, the warning sensors blinked furiously. The unknown object was accelerating. Its intent was clear now: aggressive engagement. This wasn't reconnaissance. It was an attack. Iron Fist's jaw tightened. She knew that she alone would have to confront the threat directly. Her voice came over the headset to the pilots outside. Falcon lead, maintain formation. Do not engage unless it closes to 150 meters. I'm going to handle the rest. Weapons override on my mark. A fighter pilot's voice crackled nervously. Understood, Iron Fist. Be advised this is not standard protocol. She didn't reply. Standard protocol had never saved her. Precision, courage, and calculated risk did. Then, with a subtle command, she guided the plane into a controlled lateral shift. The unknown craft followed, but its calculations lagged. For a fleeting moment, it became vulnerable. The fighter jets seized the opportunity, flanking aggressively, forcing the unknown craft to maneuver sharply to avoid collision. Inside the cabin, passengers felt the plane sway, a subtle movement that didn't alarm them fully but kept them tense. Iron Fist spoke softly, reassuring them, guiding them through minor turbulence, all the while maintaining full awareness of the impending threat. And then the unthinkable happened. The unknown craft fired a tracking device, a precise missile that would have destroyed the plane if it hadn't been intercepted. One of the fighter jets responded instantly, obliterating the projectile before it reached the plane. The cabin shuddered, coffee cups toppled, hearts raced, panic threatened to ripple through the passengers. Iron Fist moved quickly, stepping into the aisle, hands steadying a man who had fallen forward, calming a child's cries with a soft tone. She was everywhere at once, pilot, protector, leader. Through the headset, she issued rapid-fire instructions to the fighters outside. Vector adjustments Alpha, Bravo, Delta. Force engagement off our tail. Contain trajectory without risk to aircraft. Confirm. Confirmed, Iron Fist. Containment in progress, came the response. Her mind raced. She couldn't let this escalate further. She had to neutralize the threat without harming her passengers. It required skill, courage, and the kind of split-second calculation only someone who had lived in combat zones for years could execute. She glanced out the window at the approaching shadow. Recognition flashed. The operator behind this wasn't just a hired pilot or rogue drone. It was someone intimately familiar with her tactics. Someone who had trained against her methods, who knew her instincts. It was personal. Her hands clenched the headset. She took a deep, steadying breath. Then she began the maneuver she had practiced countless times, anticipating every response of the pursuer. The plane shifted subtly, fighters flanking, forcing the craft into a calculated trap. The unknown pilot attempted to correct, but Iron Fist's prediction was flawless. It overshot. The fighter jets moved in tight formation. The unknown craft, forced into an impossible vector, was now contained. It couldn't hit the plane without being intercepted. Its aggression was neutralized for now. But the threat wasn't gone. She knew it. Its operator would return. Its mission wasn't over, and she understood the next phase would require her to confront not just the craft but the people behind it. She exhaled slowly, voice calm, as she addressed the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, the turbulence has passed. We are stable. Remain seated, follow instructions. You are safe." They nodded, some wiping tears, some still clutching armrests, none understanding the true nature of the threat. Iron Fist leaned back slightly, calculating the next steps. The unknown craft was still nearby, circling, observing, and she knew with absolute certainty that the operator was someone from her past, someone who had thought erasing her would end her. Someone who now understood painfully that ghosts like her never truly die. She glanced at the captain. "We have bought ourselves time," she said quietly, "but this is not over. Prepare for further instructions." Outside, the fighter pilots reported the unknown craft was still maneuvering. Inside, the passengers remained unaware of just how close death had passed. Only Iron Fist understood the stakes, the danger, and the personal vendetta that had now entered their lives. Her eyes hardened. She had survived every mission, every betrayal, every lie. She would survive this. and when it was over, those who had hunted her would pay. But first, she had to keep everyone alive. And as the plane continued through the turbulent sky, every passenger holding their breath, one fact was undeniable. The quiet woman in 14A was no ordinary passenger. She was a legend reborn. She was Iron Fist. The sky seemed to hold its breath. For a few moments, the unknown craft had backed off, forced into retreat by Iron Fist's flawless coordination with the fighter jets. But that calm was fleeting. She knew better. Any predator this skilled didn't give up easily. It circled, studying, calculating. And she, Iron Fist, was ready to teach it the cost of underestimating a ghost. Inside the cabin, passengers tried to settle. Some whispered prayers. Others clutched the armrests with white-knuckled intensity. A mother held her child close, whispering reassurances she herself struggled to believe. A businessman filmed shakily, unsure if this was history or hallucination. But all were unaware of just how thin the line between safety and catastrophe had become. Iron Fist returned to the cockpit, eyes scanning every readout. Her fingers moved over controls with surgical precision. The captain watched her with awe. Every action she took radiated confidence, competence, and control. "Captain," she said calmly, "we've stabilized for now, but the object is circling. Its next move will be aggressive. We need to anticipate it before it acts." He nodded, swallowing. "Understood, ma'am. What's the plan?" Her eyes narrowed. "We force engagement on our terms. We can't risk passenger lives, but we can neutralize the threat." Through the headset, she spoke to Falcon Lead. "Status: unknown craft still in pursuit vector. High-speed approach imminent. Weapons primed. Maintain formation. Do not engage until I signal. I need a clear shot to contain, not destroy." Iron Fist's mind raced through scenarios. Every variable mattered. Airspeed, wind currents, turbulence, aircraft limitations, fighter jet positioning. She considered the unknown pilot's perspective, predicting every possible move, every adjustment. She had done this countless times in simulations and in real combat. But now the stakes were higher than ever. Every life in the plane, every passenger, every child, every adult depended on her. The plane lurched. The unknown craft had struck. Not a direct hit, but a near miss that sent tremors through the fuselage. Passengers screamed, gripping each other as fear surged. Iron Fist's voice cut through the chaos, calm, commanding, unwavering. "Remain seated, seatbelts fastened, follow instructions. We are in control." She moved to the aisle, checking that passengers were secure. A young boy cried softly. She bent, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was light, but her presence was heavier than the storm outside. "Everything is fine," she said quietly, almost a whisper, yet every word carried authority. "We're safe if you trust us. We survive together." Back in the cockpit, she guided the captain through evasive maneuvers. Each subtle shift was designed to manipulate the unknown craft, forcing it to overcompensate. She coordinated with Falcon Lead, issuing rapid-fire instructions. "Alpha Vector 5 degrees starboard. Bravo elevation adjustment, maintain speed. Delta correction, increase by 10 knots. Engage containment." The fighter jets responded instantly. Engines screamed. Jets weaved with deadly precision, flanking the unknown craft. Iron Fist's calculations were perfect, predicting every movement, every countermove. The unknown craft lunged forward, closing fast. Weapons systems lit up, but Iron Fist remained calm. She guided the plane into a controlled maneuver that forced the craft into a predictable trajectory. The fighters executed an intercept, blocking the craft's advance without endangering the plane. Inside, passengers felt the plane shake. Drinks spilled, phones fell, a woman screamed, but Iron Fist's voice anchored them. "Brace for turbulence, stay seated, follow instructions." Every second stretched into eternity. Every heartbeat echoed in the cabin. The unknown craft attempted another attack. Missiles, hard to tell, but the fighter jets countered, neutralizing each threat. Iron Fist leaned into the headset, calculating the next move. She had to end this engagement decisively, but without harming civilians. Her mind flickered to the past, missions gone wrong, teammates lost, betrayals endured. She had survived impossible odds before. She would survive this, and she would protect these innocents. Falcon Lead Vector Delta. Containment Protocol Gamma. Engage now. I want the craft locked, no deviation. The unknown craft reacted, but it was too late. Iron Fist's strategy was flawless. The craft was trapped in a tactical pincer maneuver. Fighter jets on either side constrained its movements. The plane remained stable, passengers unaware of the deadly ballet unfolding around them. The craft made a final desperate move, banking sharply, attempting to outmaneuver the formation. Iron Fist anticipated it. She guided the plane into a minor lateral shift, forcing the craft to overcorrect. Its trajectory faltered. The fighter jets seized the opportunity, flanking aggressively, forcing it further into containment. Her eyes flicked to the radar. It was no longer a threat, for now. The cabin remained tense, unaware of the full danger. Passengers whispered, some crying, some praying, some filming history without understanding it. Iron Fist exhaled slowly, voice calm. Ladies and gentlemen, we are stable. Minor turbulence remains, but you are safe. Remain seated, seatbelts fastened. The captain, visibly shaken, looked at her. Ma'am, that was incredible. How did you? She didn't answer. Her eyes remained on the radar, calculating, anticipating. She knew the threat wasn't gone. It would return. The operator behind the craft knew her tactics, knew her past. And now she realized it was personal. She returned to the intercom, voice calm, soft, yet carrying authority. We've stabilized, but the situation is not over. Remain seated, follow instructions, and trust us. We survive together. Passengers nodded, adjusting seatbelts, gripping armrests. They felt safer, though they didn't understand why. Iron Fist's mind raced ahead. She had won this engagement, but the battle was far from over. The unknown craft would return. The operator would return. And the next encounter would be even more dangerous. She glanced at the captain. Prepare for final approach. We'll land safely, but stay alert. The threat is still active. The fighter pilots reported the unknown craft was retreating, but still monitoring. Containment was achieved, but disengagement was tactical, not voluntary. Iron Fist's eyes hardened. She had survived everything before: betrayal, death, war, erasure. She would survive this, and when it was over, those who had hunted her would pay. But first, she had to get everyone on the plane safely to the ground. And as the sun glinted off the fuselage, casting long shadows across the cabin, passengers felt a quiet awe. They did not know who she was. They did not know what she had done. But they understood this. The quiet woman in 14A was no ordinary passenger. She was a storm. She was a legend. She was Iron Fist. The sky was still tense. The unknown craft might return at any moment. And every passenger, every fighter pilot, every crew member understood that history was unfolding in real time above the clouds. And Iron Fist was in full control. The sun dipped lower, streaking the clouds with molten gold and deep violet shadows. From the cabin, the passengers had no idea that their lives hung in the balance, unaware that the invisible war outside was far from over. The fighter jets held formation around the plane, engines screaming, as the unknown craft returned, not circling cautiously this time, but accelerating directly toward them. Every instinct in Iron Fist screamed recognition. This wasn't just a chase, this was a vendetta. She adjusted the headset, eyes narrowing, scanning readouts, tracking vectors, reading the enemy like an open book. Falcon Lead, brace for aggressive intercept. This one knows me. It's personal, she said, voice taut but controlled. The pilot's voice crackled, tension evident. Understood, Iron Fist, weapons ready, containment protocol Delta active. The cabin shuddered as a minor lurch rattled coffee cups and jolted the passengers. Some whispered prayers, others gripped armrests, eyes wide with fear. None knew why. They only felt the invisible pulse of tension, the heavy presence of danger they could neither see nor comprehend. Iron Fist's mind raced. Years of training, of missions, of betrayal, all converged in this moment. The operator controlling the craft was someone she had once trusted, someone who had been there the night her team was ambushed and declared her dead. Someone who had assumed erasing her from history would end her threat, but they had underestimated the ghost they thought they had buried. She issued rapid-fire instructions to the captain and cockpit crew, translating tactical maneuvers into survival for civilians. Every micro-adjustment of altitude, speed, and angle was designed to manipulate the enemy's trajectory while keeping the plane stable. Captain, maintain steady vector alpha. Minor lateral shift on my mark. Passengers remain unaware, but every maneuver counts. Understand? He nodded, eyes wide. Yes, ma'am. Through the headset, she coordinated with Falcon lead. Delta intercept now. Engage flank, contain trajectory. Object closing fast. Civilian aircraft protocol is priority. The unknown craft lunged. Iron Fist's calculations were flawless. She guided the plane into a subtle, almost imperceptible lateral shift, forcing the craft to overcorrect. The fighters flanked aggressively, constraining its movements. For the passengers, it felt like turbulence, nothing more. But for Iron Fist, every second was a high-stakes calculation of life, death, and precision. She scanned the radar, recognizing the familiar signature of the operator, someone who had once been by her side, someone who had betrayed her. A flash of memory surged through her. The ambush in the desert her teammates lost, the fire, the smoke, the betrayal. She clenched her jaw. This wasn't just about the craft, it was about revenge. And now she had the upper hand. She returned to the intercom, voice calm, authoritative, yet soft enough not to alarm passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, the turbulence you're feeling is minor. Remain seated, seatbelts fastened, and follow instructions. We are in control. Passengers adjusted, some nodding, some whispering, unaware that the words were the difference between panic and order. Iron Fist's eyes never left the radar. The craft made another move, aggressive this time, banking sharply, closing fast. She predicted its angle, guided the plane into a precise lateral maneuver, and signaled the fighters to flank. Engage containment now, she commanded. The fighters responded instantly, positioning themselves to intercept the unknown craft. Engines screamed. The sky seemed to crackle with energy, shadows dancing across clouds. The unknown craft tried one last maneuver to break free, but it was too late. Iron Fist anticipated every countermove. She forced the craft into a restricted vector, where it could no longer threaten the plane without being intercepted. Its movements became predictable, almost mechanical, trapped by the flawless combination of skill and tactical genius. She leaned back slightly, voice calm but commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, the turbulence is passing. You are safe. Remain seated, seatbelts fastened. Passengers breathed easier, still unaware of the near catastrophe they had just survived. But Iron Fist knew better. The operator had made one mistake, underestimating her. The craft's trajectory revealed someone desperate, personal, and reckless, someone who had believed that she could be erased from existence. Her jaw tightened. She had survived death before, but this confrontation was different. It wasn't just survival, it was justice, revenge, and exposure. The operator would pay. She scanned the horizon. The fighter jets had containment. The unknown craft could not escape without revealing itself. She had one choice: confront, neutralize, and end the threat. Her hands tightened on the headset. Every muscle in her body was coiled, ready. She spoke into the secure comms with calm authority, every word a precise calculation. Falcon lead, hold formation. Prepare for final intercept. Object must be neutralized without risk to civilian aircraft. Civilian lives are priority. I will guide the rest. The pilots outside responded instantly. Engines roared. Shadows of sleek jets and the unknown craft danced across the clouds. The operator realized too late that the prey had become the predator. Inside the cabin, passengers felt minor jolts, subtle turbulence, but nothing dangerous. They looked around, some whispering to each other, some holding phones, trying to record the moment, unaware that they were witnessing history. Iron Fist guided the plane into the precise vectors, calculating speed, angle, altitude, every micro-adjustment necessary. The unknown craft tried one last desperate attack, banking aggressively, but she had anticipated it. With a minor lateral shift, the plane forced the craft into a trap. The fighter jets intercepted decisively. Engines screamed. The unknown craft was boxed in, trapped, contained. The operator had nowhere to run. Iron Fist's voice over the comms was calm, razor-sharp. Containment confirmed. Object neutralized. Civilian aircraft safe. All passengers remain seated, follow instructions. The cockpit erupted in quiet relief. Fighter pilots acknowledged containment. The unknown craft had been outmaneuvered, forced to retreat. But Iron Fist's eyes were hard. She knew the person behind it had been someone close, someone she had trusted. The betrayal ran deep, and this encounter wasn't the end, it was a message. The passengers, oblivious to the personal stakes, exhaled collectively. Some clutched hands. Some whispered thanks. None knew that the woman guiding them had been declared dead years ago, erased from records, and now had single-handedly orchestrated a defense that saved every life aboard. Iron Fist leaned back slightly, scanning the horizon. She had survived again. She had protected the innocent. But the past had not yet been settled. Her eyes hardened. She knew the operator would return. She knew the confrontation was far from over, and when it came, it would be personal, relentless, and final. She returned to the intercom, voice calm, soft, authoritative. "Ladies and gentlemen, the threat has passed. We are stable. Minor turbulence may continue, but you are safe. Please remain seated, seatbelts fastened, and thank you for your cooperation." Passengers nodded, adjusting their seatbelts, whispering quietly. Some looked around, sensing awe, sensing presence, sensing power, but unable to name it. Iron Fist glanced at the captain. "Prepare for descent. We are clear to land, but remain vigilant. The threat may return at any moment." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the cabin. Outside, fighter jets remained in formation. And inside, the legend declared dead, Iron Fist, remained alive, commanding respect, orchestrating survival, and ready for whatever came next. The sky had witnessed her once again. The world had not yet realized the full scope of her power. She was a ghost, a warrior, a protector. She was Iron Fist. The plane began its slow descent, the sun now dipping behind the horizon, casting streaks of crimson and gold across the clouds. Inside the cabin, passengers remained seated, seatbelts fastened, faces pale and tense, still processing the turbulence and subtle jolts they had felt. None of them knew the full story, that their survival had hinged on the skills of a woman officially declared dead years ago. A woman now sitting quietly in 14A, adjusting her hoodie as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Iron Fist monitored every gauge in the cockpit, her eyes scanning for anomalies, every muscle coiled, ready for the slightest deviation. The fighters outside maintained a protective formation, engines humming like restrained thunder. The unknown craft had retreated, but her instincts told her this confrontation was not over. The operator behind it would return, and she would be ready. "Captain," she said, voice calm but commanding, "prepare for final approach. Maintain course. Speed adjustments will be minimal. Passengers must remain unaware of any further threat. We land safely or we don't land at all." The captain nodded, visibly tense but trusting her implicitly. "Yes, ma'am, ready for descent." Through the intercom, she addressed the passengers with the same calm authority that had anchored them throughout the flight. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our final descent. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened. The turbulence has passed. Everything is under control. You are safe." Few fully believed her, but her voice had a gravity that demanded compliance. Fear mixed with awe, a strange cocktail that filled the cabin. Outside, the fighters flanked the plane, scanning the horizon for any sign of the unknown craft. Iron Fist's mind was elsewhere, replaying the past, the betrayal, the missions, and the lives lost. Each memory sharpened her focus. This flight had been a test, one she had passed with precision, courage, and tactical genius. But it had also been a warning. Her enemies had not forgotten, and neither could she. The landing approach was tense. Every maneuver had to be precise. She coordinated with the captain, issuing rapid-fire instructions. Minor adjustments in altitude, a subtle bank to compensate for crosswinds, coordinating speed with the runway alignment. Every passenger was unaware of the orchestration that ensured their safety. The unknown craft had not returned yet, but Iron Fist knew its operator was watching, calculating, plotting. She was ready for whatever came next. "Falcon lead," she said quietly into the headset. "Maintain formation. Remain vigilant. I'll handle the landing." "Copy that, Iron Fist. Weapons primed, standing by." The runway emerged ahead, lights piercing the twilight like beacons. The plane descended steadily, engines roaring in controlled harmony. Inside, passengers clutched armrests or held the hands of loved ones. The young boy from earlier hid his face in his mother's lap, trembling but safe. Iron Fist noticed him and allowed herself a faint, reassuring nod. As the landing gear extended, a subtle jolt rippled through the plane, but it was expected, a controlled adjustment. The fighters held formation, flanking protectively. She guided the plane toward the runway with the precision of a veteran pilot and warrior, every calculation deliberate. "Steady, steady, hold, touchdown confirmed," she muttered under her breath. The plane touched down smoothly, tires screeching against the asphalt, brakes engaging, and the cabin exhaled collectively. The passengers remained unaware of just how close they had come to catastrophe. Iron Fist guided the plane along the taxiway to the designated gate, fighter jets maintaining a perimeter outside. Only now, as the engine slowed, did she allow herself the tiniest flicker of satisfaction. She had done it. She had protected every life on board. She had outmaneuvered a deadly threat, and she had survived. The plane came to a halt. Flight attendants released seatbelts, voices trembling but calm. Passengers began to murmur, realizing they had arrived safely. Some wept quietly, some held hands, some stared at the window, watching the sky that had been both battlefield and protector. Iron Fist rose, moving toward the exit calm as ever. The captain followed her gaze, awestruck. "Ma'am, I don't even know how to thank you," he said quietly. She allowed herself a faint smile, the kind that concealed decades of experience, trauma, and triumph. "Just keep them safe. That's thanks enough." Outside, the fighter jets executed their final flyby before returning to base. News helicopters hovering nearby caught glimpses of the plane flanked by military aircraft. Social media feeds would later explode with speculation, rumors, and videos of the extraordinary escort. But the truth, the precise tactical genius and courage of Iron Fist, would remain classified, understood only by those who had witnessed it firsthand. Passengers began to disembark, some hugging strangers, some staring in disbelief at the plane and the sky. A few glanced toward the woman in 14A, now stepping down the aisle with quiet authority. She said nothing, gave no explanation, allowed no recognition. Yet the presence she carried was impossible to ignore. Outside, a small crowd of media, authorities, and curious onlookers awaited. Security personnel ensured a perimeter, but whispers spread quickly. A commercial flight escorted by fighter jets. An extraordinary event. No one yet knew the story behind the calm, hoodie-clad woman who had orchestrated survival with unmatched skill. Iron Fist walked toward the exit, every step deliberate. A few military personnel recognized her, eyes widening in shock. They had heard the name, seen the records erased, assumed her dead. Yet here she was, alive, commanding, legendary. One officer stepped forward. "Iron Fist, we didn't believe it was you," he said quietly. She allowed herself a faint nod. "I'm here, that's all that matters." The passengers, many unaware of the full scope of events, caught fragments of recognition. The woman who had saved their lives was no ordinary passenger. The rumors, the legends, the whispers, they were all true. Iron Fist had returned, and the world would never forget her again. She turned briefly, eyes scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, the operator who had sent the unknown craft had watched and learned one truth. Iron Fist could never be erased. The ghost they had hunted was alive, vigilant, and ready. The plane, now safely at the gate, glowed under the twilight. Passengers disembarked slowly, awe and relief etched on every face. Some whispered her name. Some simply stared, sensing the legend they had just witnessed, even if they did not know the full story. Iron Fist remained calm, composed, authoritative. She had saved lives, outmaneuvered death, and faced betrayal head-on. Yet she knew her work was never done. The threats would return, challenges would rise, but she would be ready. And as she stepped away from the aircraft, fading into the shadows of the airport, one fact remained undeniable. She was no ordinary woman. She was a warrior erased by history but resurrected by courage. She was a protector unseen and unstoppable. She was Iron Fist. The sun set fully now, painting the sky in streaks of fire and gold, as if honoring the legend that had just walked among them. And somewhere in the distance, the world began to whisper her name, finally acknowledging a hero who had never truly left.